Germany. Now, when Americans hear Germany, you often think of a couple things. You think of beer, sausages, lederhosen. You probably think of Nazis. If you ask Europeans what they think of Germany, they have more nuanced stereotypes. The things Europeans say about Germany are that they are not funny. They don't have a sense of humor. That and they're very, very punctual. So all those things may or may not be true, but what's important is that Germany is a much more complex and important country than that. Germany, if you didn't know, is the third largest economy in the world behind the US and China, and the key economy of the EU. They are the industrial heart of Europe. Their success or failure in a large part determines the direction and the state of how Europe is feeling. So it's very important. I want to set the stage for what the last few years in Germany have been like before we talk about their insane recent election. For the past 20 years or so, the strategy in Germany has been remarkably successful. They get cheap natural gas from Russia, and then they export really high quality manufacturing items to China. And that worked really well right up until it didn't. Now, when Russia invaded Ukraine, sanctions were put in place to stop buying or selling from Russia. But also at the same time, to ensure that happened, there was someone, we don't know who, editor, please put the clip of Joe Biden in here.
If Russia invades the border of Ukraine, there will be no longer a Nord Stream 2.
Somebody destroyed the Nord Stream pipeline that connected the two countries, so there's no possible way that Germany could buy natural gas from Russia. So the cheap energy was gone. At the same time that this happened, the trade deficit with China started blowing out, which basically means that, after being relatively even for a long time, they started importing way more from China than they exported. China basically stopped needing so many German goods and started selling them a lot more goods. China basically caught up in a lot of things they were manufacturing and no longer wanted to buy as many German cars or German chemicals. So as these two things are happening, Germany was in a bit of a crisis. I read a book called Kaput about the German economy and the end of the German economic miracle. And one thing they mentioned is that ever since the year 2000, as the rest of the world has grown more accustomed to digitization and internet business and technology, Germany's kind of been wary. They are way slower about adopting technology and digital stuff, and they've been way more analog. They're always been hard manufacturing and not digital. That is finally starting to catch up to them. All this is catching up to them at the exact same time. And it's led to a bit of a crisis moment in the world's third largest economy. They had one of their first shrinking years since post-World War II. It's a real bad time. They had the highest number of bankruptcies since the 2008 financial crisis. So all of this is happening at once. People are losing their jobs. German auto manufacturers are closing plants in Germany and opening up factories in China. And the economic woes are pretty serious. At the same time, similar to what's happening in America or all over, there's a rising anti-immigration movement that is really riling people up and getting them really concerned about immigration and people coming in. All of this is happening at the same time in Germany. And now we're in a really chaotic period going into Sunday's, which is again yesterday's election. When this election happened yesterday, it was life or death, all or nothing. Everyone thought it was extremely important, which led to the highest turnout they've had since they became one nation again. Since West Germany reunited, 84% of the country voted. And I want to explain to you, before we get into the mechanics of what happened, I want to explain to you how their system works. Now, if you're American, you think, why don't they just simply have two parties that hate each other on everything? And whoever wins undoes everything from the other party, and then we go back and forth. But in fact, in Germany, they have many, many parties. This system actually was created after the fall of Nazi Germany because the Nazi party had uncontested sole party rule, and they wanted a system with more parties. Basically, they have this parliament with a lot of parties in it, and you need to make a coalition. Let's say this is party 1, this is party 2, this is party 3. Well, parties 1, 2, and 3 have to team up to get over the half. You have to find enough teams that can add up to over half to get something passed. And no one party gets over 50% of the vote to just do it alone. Whatever government you come up with is going to be multiple parties teamed together. The current ruling party of Germany before the Sunday election was called the Traffic Light Coalition. And basically it's because the party with the red logo, the yellow logo, and the green logo, the traffic light, they all teamed up to get over half. They make the coalition, and that's how they run. And so the Traffic Light Coalition is who is in power. And I'll give you an introduction of all the major parties. First up, we have the red one here, the SPD. This is Olaf Scholz, the current chancellor of Germany, and the man he's kind of like the Joe Biden of Germany in that he's kind of center left and got handed the hot potato at a really bad time. I'm not saying he's great. He's pretty ineffectual. hasn't been a super great leader. Germany hit all these problems right under his leadership, and so he's dead meat. Nobody wants to support him. Then you have the FDP. They're very business friendly, and the main issue that matters to them in terms of what we're going to talk about today is debt. They hate the debt. 10, 20 years ago in Germany, they made a rule called the debt break, which basically means you can't go into debt very much. There's like a cap on how much debt you can go into. This party is ride or die. We cannot break that cap. We cannot change that cap. We need to keep ourselves debt free or very little debt, minimal debt. What happened in this coalition is that these two parties wanted to spend a lot more money. This party said, fuck no, we're not doing it. We're not going into debt. We're not spending more money. And this coalition blew up. These guys basically were ousted. They exited. This two parties couldn't form a new government, and now we're having a new vote. That's why this snap election was called. The third party in this thing is the Green Party. I'm gonna do a clip about this later. To avoid comments, I'll tell you I'm not a fan of the German Green Party. I don't like this guy, Robert Habeck. I think the German Green Party has done a lot to help another party I'm gonna talk about later, which is the AfD. But I'm not gonna go too into it. All I say is the Green Party is attractive in general to younger constituents. They are obviously more left-wing. They have good stances on things like abortion and all that, but they also have a really, really anti-nuclear attitude towards green energy. They think climate change is the most important thing, but they don't want to tolerate nuclear for it. Okay, that's the main thing for the Green Party. So these three parties were the Traffic Light Coalition. It's blown up, and now there's a change in the world. Now the big two old parties, which are the red, the SPD, and this new one I'm gonna introduce, the black party, the CDU. This is like the center right. So these two parties, the CDU and the SPD, have been the parties in Germany's history since reunification. They're the center left and center right. They're like the Democrats and Republicans of America. They have been the two parties. They have been the main ones. I will say the CDU is center right by their standards, but by American standards, this is basically like a Bill Clinton era party. Okay? Center right is what you would say, this is a fairly like centrist left-wing party. And then the big radical change, the one that's been like causing so much chaos, the one that's been like causing all the stories for this election is the Alternative for Deutschland, the AfD. Again, what they would call in Germany, the far right party. Their main number one issue is like deep anti-immigration. That's their main thing. Now, I will say one thing it's worth mentioning. This party's called Nazis a lot. The Nazis are a far right party, and this is a far right party. They personally are not like other far right parties, which are pro-Nazi, in that in Germany, liking Hitler is like no party does that. It's generally Hitler is hated in Germany because he did lead the country to ruin. And this party is so on the right, they called Hitler a communist. This woman right here said that Hitler was a communist, okay?
The biggest success after that terrible era in our history was to label Adolf Hitler as right and conservative. He was exactly the opposite. He wasn't a conservative. He was a communist, socialist guy.
This also is the party, the AfD, that Elon Musk has been massively pushing for. Elon Musk has posted about the AfD 70 times around this election and has repeatedly said that only the AfD can save Germany, that their stance on immigration is the only one. The final party that I want to talk about is Die Linke. This is the left, called like the far left party. Classic far left party. They're, how'd I say this? I like them on social issues. I'm not a big on like their stance on nuclear and their stance on we need to tear down all of capitalism. But that's the left. Let's show you a little bit about this election.
Almost every signpost in Berlin will tell you the same thing. Many in Europe's biggest economy want a drastic change of direction.
This is the key theme of this election, is that Germans are kind of screaming out for a drastic change. Not all of them, but a lot of Germans are screaming out. They are feeling like things are going the wrong direction.
The news of the collapse of the ruling coalition plunging Berlin into a political crisis.
And after years of frustration, an anxious electorate was more divided than ever about who should take over. Over the past 60 or so years, the number of parties battling for seats in the Bundestag, Germany's parliament, has more than doubled. Before reunification with the East, 3 West German parties regularly secured more than 90% of votes. But in 2025, 7 jostled for power, and these increasingly popular newcomers have polarizing visions of 21st century Germany.
It's the Violet Party, the Blue Party, the Black Party, the Green Party, the Yellow Party, and the Red Party. These are the only parties that really matter in this election. Because to make it onto the chart, to make it onto this, you need at least 5% of Germany's votes. So if you get 4.8%, you have a lot of votes, you don't get included in parliament. And this matters. The Yellow Party fell under 5%, got booted. They're out. But the big question was, okay, we know the CDU is going to get the majority, or not the majority, they're going to get the most votes. They're going to get 20 to 30%. They're going to be the biggest party. So they need to fill this gap to get over here. And the big question for this election was, can they do it with one other party? Can it be a 1-2 two-party coalition? Because they've learned that three-party coalitions, like the traffic light, too many different ideas, you can't get anything done. That's like the big question in this election. And I want to tell you, I want to walk you through what happened. The results came in and they look like this. The CDU won the election. They got about 30% of the vote. Massive, huge result. Friedrich Merz will be the new chancellor of Germany. In second place, the AfD. The AfD did shockingly well. 20% of the votes. They've never polled in second place before. They've never been ahead of the SPD. This has never happened. But they didn't make it to first. In third place, the SPD, previous ruling government. In fourth place, the Greens. The Greens dropped from like 12% to 10%. Fairly poor showing, but not a massive catastrophic loss. They did bad. Left Party, shockingly well. The Left Party, again, wasn't even predicted at first to get above 5%. They ended up getting 7% and actually making it into the government. It was largely due to a huge surge in youth voting. One thing you might notice though, one thing that's very interesting about this graph is that if you take out the Greens, who they don't want to partner with, take out the Left Party, who they don't want to partner with, take out the AfD, who they don't want to partner with, they have just enough to partner with the SPD. So they are doing it. There is a grand coalition between the CDU and the SPD. This is a big deal because it means Germany has a chance of actually at least doing something. They're not having the France problem where it's so divided they can't agree on anything. I want to be clear about this. I'm not exaggerating. This is sort of what you might call a last chance election. And by that, I mean, this is the last chance for what you might call the traditional German center to hold, to basically see if we can get Germany back on track the way it was the regular way, because otherwise either the left movement or the far right movement are going to start taking over. France had a similar thing recently that didn't work out too well because they couldn't get this coalition type thing built. But Germany did. And I think it's a good, decent chance for the CDU and the SPD to work together and try to bring positive change to Germans. Now that's the thing I want to talk about. People ask, why are these parties rising in Germany? Why is the AfD seeing such rise? And I want to show you something. I want to show you a chart. This is the breakdown of the voting. You'll notice this part of Germany voted dramatically for the AfD. This part of Germany is exactly the line of the East-West divide where it used to be. And if you pull up charts of average monthly salary, people are poorer there. Average household income, people have less wealth there. Unemployment rate, people are more unemployed there. Lower minimum wages, fewer HQs of private firms, more hours worked for less money, fewer millionaires, lower life satisfaction, less cars. And so this area of Germany didn't just vote more for the far right party, they voted more for the far left party. Basically what I'm saying is, it is easy to look at a party like this that you find distasteful, and I do find it distasteful. What I'm trying to point out is that people in these areas are screaming, and I'm not saying they're like the most educated people, in fact, they're actually not. They're screaming out for change. They are screaming out for something to change, and they are going in both directions. They're just trying to find something to change. So what I'm saying with this inflection point argument is that this is kind of Germany's last chance to try and get things to materially improve the quality of life for people. Young people globally, not just in Germany, globally, are pushing more and more towards radical positions because they are not feeling they have a fair shake. They can't afford housing, inflation is rising, they can't afford good jobs, they're seeing things get worse, and so they're just getting more and more radical. So if you can't find a way to fix that, you're gonna see this get worse. That is my argument. When you do things like shut down your nuclear plants in the middle of an energy crisis, leading to skyrocketing energy costs, I think I have a quote that I've said in conversation with friends that I feel like a vote for Robert Habeck is a delayed vote for the AfD. This is my personal opinion. I think when you vote for bad policies like this, you are literally causing more people to vote for the worst party later on. This is how I believe, okay? And so, you know, I don't know if I believe it can happen, but I'm hopeful that there's enough pressure that this has to be done right, that Germany will try to turn some things around and get back to growth, improve people's quality of life, and making things better. And I think Friedrich Merz knows this. I read a lot of his interviews, I listened to a lot of his speeches since the election result came in. He said it's 5 minutes to midnight for Europe. He knows that it's a critical time. He knows that it's a last chance election, and he knows they have to make changes. One of the first things that happened when he won is that Donald Trump tweeted, much like the USA, the people of Germany got tired of the no common sense agenda, especially on energy and immigration that's prevailed for so many years. This is a great day for Germany and for the United States of America under the leadership of a gentleman named Donald J. Trump. Congratulations to all, many more victories to follow. Now, it's a little bizarre because all of the discussion that both Elon and Trump had about this election was pro-AFD, who are not included in the coalition government. They're not in power. The CDU, despite being ostensibly right-wing, is not pro-Trump or anything, or much like Trump. In fact, Friedrich Merz, upon coming into power, said this.
Ich stehe im engen Austausch mit sehr vielen Ministerpräsidenten, Staats- und Regierungschefs der Europäischen Union und für mich wird absolute Priorität
His absolute priority is to strengthen Europe
haben, so schnell wie möglich Europa so zu
as quickly as possible so that step by step
stärken, dass wir Schritt für Schritt auch wirklich
they can achieve independence from the USA. In fact, Friedrich Merz has been an immediate vocal proponent of Europe sort of standing on its own two legs, getting out from under the thumb of the United States. He also said that with Trump being the way he is, he doesn't know how NATO can continue the way it's been, which means he's talking about possibly a change in NATO. I mean, it's this drastic stuff. Again, Germany, if any country is sort of the leader of the EU. If he follows through on what he's saying, this is going to be extremely chaotic to the world order, the way it's been. I mean, day one, instantly, he worked with the Reds before he's even in power. He's trying to pass a 200 million euro increase in defense spending. He's trying to build a European defense force. They're working quickly. I'm sorry, 200 billion. Did I say million? At the same time, there's one unspoken story here, which is that every party, all of them, including the center-right one, every party has agreed to freeze the AFD out of power. Basically, they won't collaborate with them on anything. So even though they have 20% of the vote, all of the other parties have agreed not to collaborate with them. Now, people are saying W's. People are saying fuck Nazis. People are saying blah, blah, blah. This makes me nervous. I'm going to be honest with you. I have seen this strategy fail so many times. This strategy has failed so many times. Basically, there's hard evidence that being the outsider party is super good politically. Because you get to say, I would have done this right. I would have fixed this. No, you never have to be tested on anything. So what I'm saying is, this being a last chance is actually really true. In that, if they don't make material, like if things are just status quo, these parties only gonna get stronger. It's gonna get more and more powerful. It is like a serious moment where like people have to start making their citizens' life better, or people are going to get real radical real fast. As these parties like the AFD have started to surge and make electoral gains, there's been talk of like, well, we should ban them. I will tell you my opinion. This is a bad idea. This is not how democracy works. You cannot ban a party with 20% of the country. And all that does is turn them into martyrs. And it's like putting pressure in a hose. I was talking with Aiden about this. He mentioned that the Swedish far-right party recently had a bit of a surge, got a little bit of power, and they were like a dog chasing a car. They didn't know what to do once they got it. And actually, once they were in power and had to do a little bit, people hated them. I think we're finding similar things with, like, I said some people with regards to like Trump. Some people were like, hey, wait, I voted for you. I didn't want my daughter to be fired from her government job, or I didn't want the national parks to be closed or whatever. I understand this is like not the most popular opinion in the world, but I think it's a very real politic way of looking at things. I think the way democracies work is that people can't be talked out of something. People really have to see some truth. That's where we find ourselves. That's the primer on the German election that just happened. Right now, we are in the best chance Germany has to get back on track. They have a stable, two-party, centrist government. A little bit of center right, a little bit of center left. They both agree they got to fix Germany. Let's see if they can do it. Because if they can't, things are about to get real crazy in Europe real fucking quick. I'm going to ask you directly, Friedrich Merz, lock in. And we'll follow up on more on the next week's Marketing Monday.